Hello, dear friends. A warm welcome to our fifth session together. It's so lovely to be with you, and I'm so glad that you could join today. And a special warm welcome to anybody who's joining us for the first time. You can catch up with any previous sessions in Vimeo. You should all have the link for that. If any of you don't know how to access it, you can just contact the office and they'll let you know. So we set up these sessions ostensibly so that we could provide some guidance, some support, some colleagueship around staying steady in turbulent times. And our material thus far has been focusing on that. But another aspect of why we wanted to share these materials is so that, and I'm sure this is close to many of you in your heart, to be able to make a contribution. It's not enough just to look after oneself and be steady, but also contribute to the well-being and the stability and the evolution of the world around us. And even if all you're contributing to is your family unit, that's an incredible contribution right there. But as we will look at today, we also are affecting the world around us, whether we know it or not. So today we'll talk about being a conduit, what that means, and how we might go about it. So, in essence, being a conduit means allowing our whole being to function as it's designed. And we've looked at that in previous sessions, allowing our being to function as it's designed. We've talked about the energy, that it's in a perpetual state of expansion and light and harmony, and it's seeking to express that. And our being is the playground, if you like, where we work with the design to practice the extent to which we can allow our inherent nature to shine through our being. So, in addition to allowing our being to function as it's designed, our being, when we allow it to be a conduit, is going to emit a higher frequency. And that higher frequency energy is then has an impact, we could say it has a stronger, has a more influential impact on the collective. So yes, it's for our own benefit, and it always will be. Anything you do for yourself will always benefit you. But as you benefit yourself, so you benefit the collective. It's a win-win. Now, what does it take to operate your being as it's designed? Well, pretty much everything that we've talked about thus far. Remembering the design, its structure, its nature, its function, being able to be steady, a steady conscious attention placed at will is absolutely crucial to being able to show up in your being as you intend to, being able to make a contribution, being able to go about your life as you wish to. So this is absolutely crucial. We've talked about the management of the mind, what we hold in our mind, and how our mind and our emotions can sometimes distract us or pull us off course, pull us off balance. And so that we don't get the chance to allow our being to function as it's designed, because we get caught up in the subconscious triggers that arise in the present moment. It also means being able to maintain a clarity of field, which is what we covered last time, being able to rewire your field so that the longer term patterns that you're holding in your field, that you've either inherited from your lineage or you've brought into this incarnation or you've absorbed from the collective, we need to clear up those patterns in order for our field to be a part of the conduit. It's part of the mechanism of being a conduit. And of course, we need to align our energy bodies into a seamless fashion so that they facilitate the flow of energy. Now, when our conscious attention is logged onto our source energy state, it automatically upgrades our thought life. So we still do engage in thought, but it's more of a higher thought. It's an ego-free thought than an everyday thought, which is more ego-driven. And at that stage, we think, as we think, so the creator thinks, or so the creator thinks, so we think. So we're naturally in alignment with divine will. Divine will, briefly, is the encoded intent of the creator energy. And as you can imagine, that intent is a very, very sort of high frequency state of love and benevolence and has many, many different characteristics, but those are the main ones. And so as we allow our being to be a conduit, we automatically start to express and radiate our core design, our core energy, that of the creator. So as human beings with everyday lives to lead, it's not often during our upbringing, during our schooling, further education, or in our workplace, or even with our friends, that we sit around discussing the ultimate goal of life, which is to realize one's true nature and to be able to express that in an unhindered way. It's not the kind of thing that people usually sit around and discuss. But I wanted to bring it in here to just remind us of the bigger picture. It doesn't need to be what you're shooting for. If you just want to steady your being, make a contribution in your immediate environment, that's absolutely fine. We all have free will. But I wanted to bring it in to say that we are designed for the ultimate expression of the energy from which we're made. So what we can realistically achieve is much, much more than we can imagine. And the people who've completed that journey, they in the past, in ancient times, they were known as God beings, and or enlightened masters or ascended masters. Um, and because religion doesn't play much of a central role in our lives anymore, because faith is on the decline and sort of worldly distractions are in the ascendancy, we perhaps are not used to seeing, there's not many examples talked about or in the media of people who've reached the pinnacle of divine expression. Certainly not the focus of, mainstream media. And those that we do know about, we tend to deify them and assume that their achievements are special and, unlikely for us to be able to achieve them. These people do exist in the present. They usually keep to themselves and don't attract too much attention. But it is a part of our purpose here on earth to use our lessons, to use our challenges, to use our growth to at least head in that direction. And eventually, all of us will reach the end of our journey or the end of our limited ego-driven phase. And once we reach that stage of enlightenment, obviously we keep progressing and going on, but we've come through that most challenging part of our journey. We are accustomed to seeing human beings, that our day-to-day perception of human beings is from, we judge it by a much, much lower bar than our ultimate potential. You know, we when we think of human beings, we think of all, the troubles in the world. We think of personal struggles and issues, and we tend to view that as normal. And so our assumed perception of human beings is fairly low level, and therefore we don't expect much from our species. And if we do, we're often disappointed. But we are made from the exact same raw material as Buddha or Jesus or Krishna or Ramana Maharshi in this case, in this photo. Obviously there are no photos of Muhammad or Buddha or Jesus knocking around, so I had to find a photo that of somebody that was, well, if not current, then fairly recent in the last 100 years. I just want to bring in a note on expectations here because I think for spiritual seekers, there's a lot of aspiration, and sometimes we can spend our whole spiritual journey on aspiration without much traction. And if we do that for too long, it can lead to frustration and disappointment and maybe giving up. The other side of the picture is, and I say this lovingly and gently, we don't have a choice. Whether we attend to our development, our evolution in this lifetime, another one, or in 100 lifetimes, we have to get around to it eventually. We're not given a choice in that. However, how we go about it, how we express our divine nature is up to us. We can choose our own path. And within limits, we can go faster or slower. So, so we do have some say, but we don't have a say in the overall purpose of why we exist. However, if we are wanting to walk this path where we really are serious about attending to our being, to deeply understand it, to work with whatever challenges arise in a coherent and conscious and effective way, to rewire our field, to clear our mind, to take care of all of our subconscious triggers. If we wish to be a conduit, to be of service, then we have to be willing to sign up for the long haul. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes persistence to reach that goal. It's not as some, courses or, Instagram pages would have you believe that, oh, you just do this and then you get that. It doesn't work like that. The evolution of consciousness is long and slow, but it's thorough. And once you've achieved something, there's no going back. So we don't regress. So what we're describing here is a lives long journey rather than a lifelong journey. It's a lives long journey. But we need to begin somewhere. And every single step of growth that we achieve helps us and helps those around us. So it is definitely worth undertaking. Now, I wanted to look at a couple of research projects that have been, both of them are actually very long running. This first one, the Global Consciousness Project, has been going for, I think, more than 30 years. It was originally conceived by Roger Nelson at Princeton. And the aim of the project is to see if there is a direct influence between global consciousness and physical systems, sorry. And especially during major world events, so it's a little easier to manage, where the majority of the world is occupied by a singular event. So the way that they do this, they set up a number of random number generators. In the beginning, there were 70 of them. Now there's more than 4,000. And the project operates on the hypothesis that events which elicit a widespread shared emotional response or focused attention, so that would be like a mass meditation, something like that, can cause subtle, statistically significant deviations in the output of the hardware in the random number generators. So these random number generators, they're just machines which spit out numbers randomly. And it does what it says on the tin. You can't predict or guess. Even the machine itself doesn't know the next number that's coming. That's the way they're programmed. So they established this worldwide network of these devices to continuously generate these random numbers. So that it's continuously spitting out random numbers. And all of these numbers are captured by the central server at Princeton University. And then researchers examined the data around specific predefined global events such as September 11 or major religious rituals or global meditations or major world events. And what they found was that in over 500 of these events, that there was a significant shift in the way that the RNGs pushed out the numbers. There was, in fact, a synchronization, a non-randomness during those moments. So this supports the idea that there is such a thing as global consciousness. Now, they are continuing this research. It's recently been taken over by the HeartMath Institute. And so the Project 2.0 is now looking at a larger, more sensitive network and focusing on what happens when heart-centered intentions and collective coherence happen and the way that that affects the field. And with all of these things, you can imagine that it attracts some criticism from the scientific community. Not everybody is comfortable with the methodology. And I think they're more uncomfortable with what it suggests because it's something that the current scientific community isn't yet able to adequately measure or explain, which of course drives scientists mad. So they can't account for why the RNGs would respond to human output, even though there are papers out there where they admit that they can see that it does. But it was interesting that in one of the papers it said that they didn't believe that these devices would respond to, and I quote, low energy human thought. And I thought, gosh, isn't that interesting? I bet they don't realize what they're saying, low energy human thought. But it certainly responds to high energy human thought. So that's something for them to mull over if they ever decide to. And the second research is something you've probably heard about also. I'm on the steering committee and on the board of the HeartMath Institute, and the Global Coherence Initiative is part of that. So this was started a few years ago to study how collective human emotional states can affect the Earth's electromagnetic field. I'm swallowing my words today. And has found evidence of a synchronization between individuals and global fields. Now, this is not the same as the synchronization between mass events and the random number generators. This is a completely different modality, a completely different devices, and a different aspect that they're looking at. And their monitors are so sensitive that they can detect subtle shifts in the Schumann resonances, which are several miles out from the Earth. and part of the Earth's electromagnetic field. They found that when people practice heart focused coherence, such as through meditation, their heart rhythms synchronize globally. And I've actually been part of a study where this research was undertaken. And the results are pretty astounding. And they astounded even the researchers as well. They weren't expecting that. And this points to a link between collective consciousness, the geomagnetic field, which is the carrier wave for this influence, and human behavior. So this has potential implications for, you know, global problem solving and a shift in consciousness. So when they looked at global synchronization, they found that people meditating or practicing, self-regulation techniques can synchronize their heart rhythms even when they're hundreds of miles apart. And that these rhythms then become synchronized with the Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field is oscillating at zero point 0.1 hertz. And this happens to be, uncoincidentally, happens to be the resonant frequency of the human heart. So you can see as part of our design that the creation of our being and the creation of the earth are designed to be in sync. They're designed to link up, and that there is a mechanism, a vehicle by which that influence can be carried. Their research also suggests that, as well as carrying energetic information, that it's a carrier wave also for biological information. So, in their research between human and animal and human and plant, they found that that same influence is there. So it's not just other people that we're affecting when we go on this journey of self-development and evolve and use our being as the conduit. We're actually affecting all of Earth's living systems. And one of their hypotheses is that a large scale increase in individual and group coherence creates like a standing wave in the global field, which then has a knock-on effect on global consciousness. And this is an interesting slide here. Again, this is used one of the HeartMath slides. You can see that on September 11, right at the time that the planes hit the Twin Towers, that there was this incredible spike in the geomagnetic field, and that in the days afterwards, you can see the incoherence in the field as the sort of shockwave went round the world. It's just interesting to see the data. And what the GCI research has found is similar to what the random number generators have found, that in addition to noticing what is happening in the Earth's geomagnetic field, the magnetometers, which are the instruments in the ground, buried in the ground, they too start to show non-random patterns during global events. They saw this with the COVID-19 pandemic. They see it with singular events. There was the inauguration of Barack Obama, caused that. Obviously, 9/11, the death of Princess Diana. They've noticed that during these events, there's a significant change from random patterns to non-random patterns. And when we say random patterns in terms of the geomagnetic field, they're just patterns we don't yet understand. Other things that affect the geomagnetic field are things like solar flares. And when there's fluctuations in the Earth's field, we have a higher incidence of traffic accidents and homicides and depression. So there are these large scale influences that happen and large scale interactions that happen between human beings and the living environment and the field around the earth. It's very, very interesting. So it supports this idea that there is human consciousness, that there is a global consciousness, and that intentions can influence the global field. And that, of course, collective emotional state of humanity can have a measurable effect on the planet's systems. So the clearer and more elevated that we are, the more influence we have, the more reach and impact we have. So I hope that has encouraged you. So when we talk about being of service, this is a little bit, out of vogue. Um, in the past, in the ancient times, it was very central to our idea of our duty as human beings. But these days, it seems like it's every man for himself, and we are encouraged to be, more selfish, more singular, more independent rather than interdependent, and to get ahead, whether that's at the expense of others or not. So there's notions about being of service feel a little old-fashioned these days, and I think as such, there are some misguided ideas about what it entails. It is associated historically anyway with sacrifice and celibacy, hardship. Wearing hair shirts and thrashing yourself, but all and any positive influence, however subtle, helps the collective. And we are all contributing. We are all emitting. This is another aspect of heart maths research, or the signals that the heart is sending out 24/7. We are all emitting stations. So we are like the magnetometers. We're sending out information. We're also receiving it all the time. And most of us are unaware of that. But if we are emitting all the time, if we're sending out signals all the time, then it makes sense to be conscious of what we're emitting so that we can have a beneficial effect. And one of the simplest and easiest ways to do that is to hold benevolent intentions. It's very, very simple. And to send elevated energy in the form of, during meditation, such as we've been practicing each each time we meet. Your heart is hardwired, it's encoded, it's designed in such a way to be the perfect conduit for loving intent, for anything you want to send out, whether that's peace or joy, encouragement, healing. And your heart is the seat of your soul. And as such, the very heart and soul of you is the presence of that universal energy containing that universal love. So it's not like you have to learn how to do this. Your heart knows how to do this already. We just simply need to give ourselves the time, undertake a little bit of practice, and then do it. So coming together with others obviously amplifies this effect, and then it helps us to be accountable and show up, and it makes it more enjoyable perhaps too. At a certain point in our development, being of service is just a natural inclination. It's not something that is generated in the mind, like, oh, I think I should be of service. It's not a sense of owner's duty. It never appears like that. Being of service just arises where? In the heart, as a notion that we want to and are willing to do. And as we evolve, as we get into the more advanced stages of our evolution, yes, we can sometimes be called upon to serve in ways that are not personally convenient, but that's only as a test of whether our intentions are ego free or ego driven. So we will be tested along the way. We don't just get, you know, given a free pass and wave through. We have to demonstrate what we've learnt repeatedly. But for somebody who is inspired to be of service on and that inspiration is arising naturally, then no challenge is too much to overcome. Okay, good. Before we move into our meditation practice today, I just want to tell you that next week is our last session, and the topic is envisioning the future. So that's where we're going to really let our imagination run free and let our spirit soar and really try to collectively imagine the optimal future for this planet, for all the beings that occupy it. So that'll be a lovely focus. And we'll maybe look at some, interesting projects and ideas and ways of seeing and being that are becoming more mainstream and gaining traction, because that's always encouraging. And next week, we'll have a longer session. So we'll have a 90-minute session because we want to include some time for Q&A. So perhaps as we've been through all this material, you have questions that relate to your practice or something that you want clarification on. So we can take some time next week to field questions that arise. Okay,